Welcome everyone to Race in Point. My name is Lavette Coney.
And my name is Michelle Chalmers. Welcome everyone to our first episode. We're super excited to have you join us on Race in Point as we engage in authentic dialogue with each other and share some of our insights, our experiences, and things that are important to us, and we hope they're important to you. And so we thought we would introduce ourselves a little bit to you first.
Again, my name is Lavette Coney, and I am an anti-racist educator. I work with teachers and adults around these issues of racism and white supremacy and white fragility. And I also am the leader of White People Challenging Racism.
And I also co-facilitate with Lavette for the grassroots organization White People Challenging Racism. And Lavette and I co-facilitate with each other for other opportunities to engage with teachers and parents and community organizations to really think about how race and racism shows up in our lives and in the work that we do, especially for educators and working with children. And so we wanted to share with you our friendship and also what we're learning and continue to learn as we engage together. And so we thought we would do this in this organic format, both as racial justice educators, not only as people who facilitate conversations and have these conversations, but also as continuing on this journey of learning together.
And recognizing the strains that being in a racialized society has on relationships like ours.
Yes, absolutely. I think one of the things that maybe we could share a little bit about is, what is your understanding or definition of race?
First of all, race is a social construct. It's not actually real.
So what does that mean?
What it means is that I am part of the human race, but we all are part of the human race, but we have different ethnicities and different cultural backgrounds and norms that differentiates us, right? And some of that has to do with the melanin in our skin, shape of our eye, texture of our hair, but it doesn't have, the way we use race is incorrect. And so that's one of my pet peeves when I hear people say that when they really mean ethnicity.
When they say
my race is, or what race are you, when they really mean what's your ethnicity, what's your cultural background.
Right. And that's true. And I think in this country, race is so salient, and it's something that some people think about a lot, and some people don't think about it at all. Especially people in my racial group, being white. And I think that was the biggest thing for me, is understanding that race truly isn't real. Now, racism certainly is. And so a lot of times when I say race isn't real, wait, yes it is. Like, do you understand? And so I get that. But I think for me to be able to understand my own humanity and myself as a human being, that I needed to understand that race as a social construct, that it was created, and I actually found out recently in 1681 was actually the first time that the word white, that it was mentioned in case law. And this was in the colonies, in case law, where a group of people, of human beings, were designated as white. In this country. And so race is not biological. You and I are 99.9% the same.
Even though phenotypically we don't look it, on the outside, but yes, it's hard for someone to really wrap their head around that, though.
It is, right?
Yeah.
It is. So that's why I think it sort of hung on and still does. But I think it's important, you know, that maybe people still won't believe that race isn't real, especially like you said, we look so different. And our ancestors are from different areas of the world.
But we all came from Africa.
That's right. So,
because I mean, that's a part of it too that people don't understand, that like my group of people can make you and produce someone who looks like you.
Yes.
But your group of people can't produce someone that looks like me. So that's hard for people to understand as well, right?
Yes. If they don't have that understanding of what race is and what race isn't, and the biology, right? And evolution, and how we've evolved as a people from darkly pigmented, melanated people as we, you know, came out of Africa, and then obviously our degree of melanin changed in our skin as relates to the sun and our ability to absorb vitamin D, which is fascinating.
Right, it is.
And I mean, I lived on this planet for over 40 years and
didn't know that, right?
Lavette.
Right, like a lot of people don't. So here's the thing. Like a lot of people are into watching reality TV opposed to learning things like that. And that's why we're in the trouble that we're in right now, I think. As an educator, I see it happening all the time.
So what do you mean by that? So isn't reality TV what we're talking about?
No, reality TV where people are not actually learning and reading books, opening up books and talking and having discussions like we are. And not really a part of, like, they're in a bubble, right? And they're in this bubble that's been manufactured, right? So they're not able to see these things because it's not a part of their construct, like their psychological construct and their daily lives. Right? To question things, to be inquisitive, to be a critical thinker. Those are missing pieces in our society right now. So
well, and I think they were missing pieces as we grew up in this country.
That too.
Yeah, that they weren't part of our education
and some
system.
were intentional and some were unintentional, right?
Yes. And those are the kind of conversations that we kind of want to have, right? So we hope to bring a show to you that will not only be interactions between Lavette and myself through our friendship and through experiences that we might be having, but bringing to you current events and guest hosts or guest speakers. Yes, so we're hoping to invite people to come on with us and to engage in a conversation. You had the idea that you wanted it to be sort of formatted after
The View. In The View, what they do is they get information like from the news, like the headlines, and they talk about those and what they think about those. And I really believe that almost anything that we look at, we can find a point of race, and we can find a point where race intersects with that idea or that information. And a lot of people say, why does it always have to be about race? Because most often it is about race, because we live in a racialized society. Like, we're swimming in it, we're breathing it, and we don't really recognize it unless our eyes are open to it, right?
And it's more so about, like, when I look at something, or if I'm looking at it through a lens of race, or specifically more racism or more systemic racism, right? I think that sometimes people think, well, you're always talking about race, or you're always looking at things race, that somehow that's person to person, right? And that when you bring up race, you're saying that this person didn't like this person. That didn't happen in this story. And absolutely right? In most cases, you're exactly right. That we're looking even deeper, that it's not just an interpersonal or a person to person when we talk about that this had racial undertones or had something racial to do with it. It's more about the systems that have put people in positions or places by design. And that systemic, and that the way that race has played out in our systems is really where I think a lot of that deeper critical thinking that you're bringing up, that comes through. And if we don't see the world that way, it's going to be very difficult to have a conversation, right?
Because most people have a misinformation about what race means and what it is, right? And so you have to have some common language first, and then have that conversation.
That's right.
I need to know what you mean in order for us because you may be thinking something totally different from me, and we're having a conversation and we're going like this.
That's right. And doesn't that happen in our relationship, being a Black woman or a woman of African descent? You can share how you identify, and as a white woman.
I think we see more eye to eye than, I don't know, other people. I mean, we've been friends for a very long time, and we're able to be real with one another. And I don't know what that's like for you to have an African American woman be real with you.
Awesome.
In the way, in the way that I am. So, you know, it's I don't necessarily see us as going in opposite directions. I mean, obviously, as people too, we're going to have different opinions
Right.
and like different perspectives, right?
Right.
But also too, I see that we want that to work, right? So it's going to be different for us,
Yes.
right?
Well, but it has evolved. I think that's something that we certainly didn't start out with when we first became friends. I know I didn't feel that way. Wanted to, understand how you walk the world, and understood. I think that's one of the most important things in a cross-racial relationship. And I can only speak as a white woman. For a white woman, I need to understand that your experiences are different than mine, right? That we're both women. However, because of this social construct, because of obviously the systems are in place, if I don't understand that, then I don't know if our friendship can really develop to how that really what we might want in a truthful relationship. I need to understand. Now, I might not always understand how things show up for you or how you might be perceiving something, right? Because all Black women don't think the same way.
Right. Not monolithic.
No, absolutely not. And so that, but isn't that also something that you have to think about, right? Because here I am as a white woman going, okay, well, I have a Black friend. And so all Black women think like that. No, they don't.
Right.
No, they don't.
Right.
And so making sure
That'd
that
be the big mistake, right?
that would be, well, and again, I'm not saying that I have not made that mistake, right? And so, but isn't that friendship that when I do make those mistakes, that you're able to call me in,
Right.
And be able to say, Michelle, this is, again, and maybe we can even share some of those things, and as they continue to happen, right, we might be able to even share them on Race and Point and how we sort of got through that, and what I needed to hear, what you needed to hear, and how that relationship can grow because of that.
So I'm sure white fragility is still a part of your ethos.
Yes.
So I'm just
Do you wanna
wondering
explain that,
I think you should. But I think during time, you've evolved and you're able to recognize it more and like to catch yourself.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering, how much do you think you've evolved with the white, in the white girls' tears and white women's tears? Like,
Yeah.
did you hold them in now, or
Yeah.
do you? What do you do now?
Yeah. Well, white fragility is, is a term that I'm, getting more sort of comfortable with. At first, when I heard this term was developed by Dr. Robin DiAngelo, a white woman who does anti-racist work like ourselves. She has written a book called White Fragility that I definitely recommend. But I recommend it, again, we're all on this journey. And some people aren't on the journey. Some people are on the journey.
But I believe if we all were on the journey, we would have a better world. I really do. Because some people think it's just a hobby, and it's like, oh, that's something that you do. I care about the whales. No, we all need to be doing this work. And it's not a hobby. It is part of our humanity, as you say. And I love when you say that. It's a part of our humanity. If we're not all doing that, are we fully human? There's a professor at the University of Texas in Austin, Texas, and I'm trying to remember his name right now, but he has a book that talks about that. He says, like, if you're a white person and you're not doing this work, you're not fully human.
Yeah.
We'll make sure we show it at the end of the episode today.
And I'll be honest, I totally believe that. It's emotional. It really gets to my core. And so sometimes I come across as angry and upset. And I want to so much explain about what my real intent is.
Right.
But that impact, and we can talk about intent versus impact, when a cross-racial relationship, but there's that intent versus impact when a white person is, having a conversation that might be steeped around racism and race and white supremacy, that there's that intent versus impact. There's very much this idea that somehow if I speak about these things, that I'm not polite.
But that was ingrained in the culture, right? I mean, even for people of African descent, the same thing. They go like, white person. And I'm like, why are you whispering? So
Black
even
people do that too?
Yes. Yes. And I was just thinking about what you were saying earlier about not really getting to know people of color. It's so sad. Like when I'm in Brookline and I see all these white people who are like probably don't have any circle of friends of color, and they're just so satisfied with just living in this world, this bubble where they only see people who look like them and interact with people who look like them. I'm like, I feel so sorry for them. But they don't feel sorry for themselves. They don't even think of it.
What are they missing?
They're missing actual authentic relationships with people who don't, I mean, what changes could come about through those interactions, right? And I even say with internalized racism, how it's killing potential, right? And killing people's ability to like move forward as a whole human being.
Right.
So yeah, they're missing a lot, but they don't think that, right?
Well, and I think that's another reason why we want to do this work and why we want to share sort of these things that we think, things that we're thinking, feeling, things that we're experiencing, and relate them as much as we can to current events and things that are happening not only in our community, but around our country with our children.
Right.
We both have 4 boys. And just
2 apiece.
Yes. Yes. 2 each. Yes. And so I think that or we hope will be something that you're interested in learning more about, and that we can bring our authentic selves to not only share how things show up in our relationship, but how we benefit from that.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, that is what we're trying to do. Is that I truly believe that our humanity is so tied to this.
It's at stake.
It really is.
Now let's go to our race and point segment. Michelle?
This will be a segment that we'll have probably at every one of our episodes, where we'll either share a video with you or an article, or share a little bit about current news, and then have a conversation about that. So today we have, Lavette has chosen a small segment from the congressional hearing on H.R. 40, which is a bill for creating a commission to look at reparations for African Americans. And so this is going to be Ta-Nehisi Coates in his opening statement and just a few of the words that he spoke at that hearing.
Yesterday, when asked about reparations, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell offered a familiar reply. America should not be held liable for something that happened 150 years ago, since none of us currently alive are responsible. This rebuttal proffers a strange theory of governance, that American accounts are somehow bound by the lifetime of its generations. But well into this century, the United States was still paying out pensions to the heirs of Civil War soldiers. We honor treaties that date back some 200 years, despite no one being alive who signed those treaties. Many of us would love to be taxed for the things we are solely and individually responsible for. But we are American citizens, and thus bound to a collective enterprise that extends beyond our individual and personal reach. It would seem ridiculous to dispute invocations of the founders or the greatest generation on the basis of a lack of membership in either group. We recognize our lineage as a generational trust, as inheritance. And the real dilemma posed by reparations is just that, a dilemma of inheritance. It is impossible to imagine America without the inheritance of slavery. As historian Ed Baptist has written, enslavement, quote, shaped every crucial aspect of the economy and politics of America, so that by 1836, more than 600 million, or almost half of the economic activity in the United States, derived directly or indirectly from the cotton produced by the million-odd slaves. By the time the enslaved were emancipated, they comprised the largest single asset in America, $3 billion in 1860 dollars, more than all the other assets in the country combined. The method of cultivating this asset was neither gentle cajoling nor persuasion, but torture, rape, and child trafficking. Enslavement reigned for 250 years on these shores. When it ended, this country could have extended its hallowed principles, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to all regardless of color. But America had other principles in mind. And so for a century after the Civil War, black people were subjected to a relentless campaign of terror, a campaign that extended well into the lifetime of Majority Leader McConnell. It is tempting to divorce this modern campaign of terror, of plunder, from enslavement. But the logic of enslavement, of white supremacy, respects no such borders. And the god of bondage was lustful and begat many heirs: coup d'etats and convict leasing, vagrancy laws and debt peonage, redlining and racist GI bills, poll taxes and state-sponsored terrorism. We grant that Mr. McConnell was not alive for Appomattox, but he was alive for the electrocution of George Stinney. He was alive for the blinding of Isaac Woodward. He was alive to witness kleptocracy in his native Alabama and a regime premised on electoral theft. Majority Leader McConnell cited civil rights legislation yesterday, as well he should, because he was alive to witness the harassment, jailing, and betrayal of those responsible for that legislation by a government sworn to protect them. He was alive for the redlining of Chicago and the looting of black homeowners of some $4 billion. Victims of that plunder are very much alive today. I am sure they'd love a word with the Majority Leader. What they know, what this committee must know, is that while emancipation deadbolted the door against the bandits of America, Jim Crow wedged the windows wide open. And that is the thing about Senator McConnell's something. It was 150 years ago, and it was right now. The typical black family in this country has 1/10 the wealth of the typical white family. Black women die in childbirth at 4 times the rate of white women. And there is, of course, the shame of this land of the free, boasting the largest prison population on the planet, of which the descendants of the enslaved make up the largest share. The matter of reparations is one of making amends and direct redress, but it is also a question of citizenship. In H.R. 40, this body has a chance to both make good on its 2009 apology for enslavement and reject fair-weather patriotism, to say that a nation is both its credits and its debits, that if Thomas Jefferson matters, so does Sally Hemings, that if D-Day matters, so does Black Wall Street, that if Valley Forge matters, so does Fort Pillow. Because the question really is not whether we will be tied to the somethings of our past, but whether we are courageous enough to be tied to the whole of them. Thank you.
I believe everything that he said there is so spot on. The fact that McConnell obviously doesn't get it. He doesn't understand the impacts, like whatever happened in the past still has a ripple effect today, and it impacts people. And not only that, the benefits that people of European descent have gotten, even though their ancestors are dead. He doesn't get and understand that wider perspective. He's only seeing it in a narrow view. And so therefore he's able to say, well, we shouldn't be responsible for what our ancestors did. No, you do, because you're benefiting from it. So I just believe that what he said was just very, very spot on.
And how does that make you feel when you hear something like that?
Just speaking facts, you know, like the young kids say, facts, just prevent the facts and present the facts. And that's what he did, you know? And he didn't have that oversight to even think of that. Like, why would he not think about the things that he was here for, that like represent all of those things that we're talking about that his ancestors, you know, initiated?
Well, and I think that goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, is understanding the systems and understanding the long history of systemic racism.
Right.
And that it is all intertwined.
It is.
It is all connected. And that's what's so ironic, and I think that Ta-Nehisi Coates talks about this later on, and it might have actually been another panelist too, that somehow, when we talk about, 9/11, everything that has happened since then is connected. When we talk about, the Holocaust, everything since then is connected.
Right.
And the experiences that people have. I can't, maybe we could find somebody, but I would guess if we talk to people from Japanese descent who had experiences or families that were in concentration camps in this country in the 1940s, that they wouldn't still have that residual, not only the residual trauma from that, but the residual economic impacts.
Oh, yeah. And then also, too, there's some genetic change that happened as well. There's some research on that, for the Holocaust. So definitely for the African Holocaust, right? The Middle Passage and all the things that transpired thereafter.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's so much of that history that is rooted in so much pain and anguish. And that's what's so hard when we see, for me, a leader of this country and a leader of the Senate saying those things and making those comments and realizing the pain that has already been experienced because of policies that were rooted in racism and hate. And then to say something like that now, that somehow we're not responsible for that, it just hurts. It hurts again. And I can imagine, and I have so much empathy and compassion for people of color and specifically Black people, who have to hear this and know that this is
Re-traumatizing? Re-traumatizing.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. But I think for him, he sees it on that, interpersonal level. Like, oh, I didn't do anything specifically. Right. And then also, too, he thinks, okay, people of color are so much better off. People of African descent are so much better off. So what are we complaining about? Right. There's that ethos as well, right? And then also, too, when we talk about racism, we have to think about not only the systems and institutions, but also the ideology. And his ideology is rooted right in there.
Well, ideology is really the disease, right? I mean, that really is the crux of that sort of hard drive, if you will, as Debbie Irving says, that is something that we all walk the world with. And like you said, Black and white, the same. People of color, you live in this country, you are going to internalize race and racism. And
it's a part of who we are in the United States. It just is.
It is.
It'd be great if we can move away from that, but we can't move away from it if we're not talking about it.
So I think we'll have a lot more conversations.
Oh, way more.
To have. We really hope that this has been at least a little entertaining.
It has for us.
It has been. And hopefully a little educational. And we want to be organic. We will try to have some more structure to the show. And certainly, as we said, to have guests on the show. If you have questions or things that you want to share with us, please do. We don't speak for other people. I speak for myself.
I speak from the I perspective.
That's exactly right. And so we are really grateful to have this privilege and opportunity to be part of Wellesley Media.
And you don't see something like this. I mean, you don't see shows like this. And this is what we're missing, this dialogue and this chance to talk. I mean, I have to say, with working with teachers, there was one workshop that I gave at Matsall where I had them write in a journal about their past. It's like similar to what we were doing prior to being with white people challenging racism, where they write a racial awareness journey. And there were so many teachers who came up to me and they were like
White
teachers,
Yeah.
of course. And they're pouring out, these sentiments of, we don't get a chance to talk about these things. And I hadn't even thought of this incident that happened in my childhood until now. And now I realize how much it impacted me even till today. And you made me, help me to make a connection. And so this is really important work. And we see that as such.
Absolutely. So thank you for joining us on our first episode of Race in Point. Join us again, and hopefully we'll have a host, what are we going to call him?
Our guest speaker.
A guest speaker. Hopefully we'll have a guest speaker for you, and please reach out to us at info@raceinpoint.com. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.